Did you know that right now, in your backyard, you could be growing ancient superfoods that were nearly erased from history? Foods so powerful that they fed entire civilizations for thousands of years. Foods that corporations don't want you to know about because you can grow them yourself, for free, forever. In 1989, a team of scientists made a discovery that shocked the agricultural world. They found forgotten crops from the Incan Empire, crops that had been hidden, ignored, and nearly lost to time. These weren't just old vegetables. These were survival foods, foods that grew in impossible conditions, foods that saved lives. And today, I'm going to show you 8 of these lost Incan treasures that you've probably never heard of, but absolutely need to know about. Stick around because number 3 on this list is so nutritious that NASA is studying it for space missions. And that bonus tip at the end? It's going to change the way you think about your entire garden forever. Before we dive in, let me tell you why this matters. For most of human history, we didn't eat just wheat, corn, and rice. We ate hundreds, even thousands of different plants. But over the last century, industrial agriculture has narrowed our food supply down to just a handful of crops. Meanwhile, these ancient foods that our ancestors depended on, were pushed aside and forgotten. The knowledge almost died completely. But in 1989, everything changed. A groundbreaking report called Lost Crops of the Incas was published by the National Research Council. It documented these incredible plants that had fed millions of people in South America for generations, but had been ignored by modern agriculture. And what they found was stunning. These crops were easier to grow, more nutritious, and more resilient than anything we're eating today. So if you've ever felt frustrated by failed harvests, expensive grocery bills, or gardens that just won't cooperate, this video is your answer. These lost Incan crops are about to become your secret weapon. And the best part? Most of them are ridiculously easy to grow. Now, before we count down all 8 of these incredible plants, do me a quick favor. Hit that subscribe button right now and turn on notifications. Why? Because I'm here to help you grow smarter, not harder. And every week I share gardening secrets like this one that'll save you money, grow more food, and give you real independence. Your support means everything, so thank you. Now, let's jump into the list. Number 8, Ulluco, the colorful tuber that survives anything coming in. At number 8, we have Ulluco. And I'm going to be honest with you, most people have never even heard of this plant. But in the Andes Mountains, where the Incas lived, Ulluco was a staple crop. It's a small, colorful tuber that looks almost like a cross between a potato and a candy. You'll find them in shades of bright yellow, pink, red, and even purple with swirling patterns. They're beautiful. But more importantly, they're incredibly productive and nearly indestructible. Here's what makes Ulluco so special. This plant thrives in cold, high-altitude conditions where other crops struggle. The Incas grew it at elevations over 12,000 feet, where frost hits regularly and the growing season is short. Most vegetables would die in those conditions. But Ulluco? It just keeps growing. In fact, frost actually improves the flavor of the tubers, making them sweeter and more tender. Now, you're probably wondering, can I grow this in my garden? Absolutely. Ulluco prefers cool climates, so if you live in zones 3 through 8, you're in the perfect range. It grows best in spring and fall when temperatures are between 50 and 65 degrees Fahrenheit. Hot summers can slow it down, but as long as you give it some shade during peak heat, it'll do just fine. Planting Ulluco is simple. You plant small tubers, just like you would with potatoes. Space them about 8 to 12 inches apart in loose, well-drained soil. They need consistent moisture, but they're not fussy. Within a few months, you'll see lush green foliage above ground and clusters of colorful tubers forming below. When harvest time comes in late fall, you'll dig up handfuls of these vibrant little gems. One plant can produce a pound or more of tubers. The flavor is mild, slightly nutty, and a little tangy, almost like a cross between a potato and a beet. You can boil them, roast them, fry them, or even eat them raw in salads. The Incas often dried them for long-term storage, which meant they had food security year-round. And here's the kicker. Ulluco is packed with protein, vitamin C, and minerals. It's a complete nutrition package in a colorful little tuber. But here's the part that most people don't realize. Ulluco almost disappeared completely. After the Spanish conquest, European crops like wheat and barley were pushed on the indigenous populations, and traditional foods like Ulluco were dismissed as primitive or inferior. For centuries, this incredible crop was grown only by small communities in remote mountain villages. It was nearly lost to history. That's why the 1989 report was so important. It brought Ulluco back into the spotlight and showed the world that this forgotten food deserved a place in modern gardens. Today, you can find Ulluco tubers through specialty seed companies and online gardening communities. And trust me, once you grow it, you'll wonder why it ever disappeared in the first place. Number 7. Oca, the tangy potato alternative that grows itself. At number 7, we have Oca, and this one is a game changer. Oca is another tuber crop, but unlike potatoes, it has a bright, tangy flavor that's almost lemony. The Incas loved it, and in many parts of the Andes, it's still the second most important tuber crop after potatoes. But outside of South America, hardly anyone knows it exists. Here's what makes Oca incredible. It's one of the easiest crops you'll ever grow. Seriously. You plant it, water it occasionally, and then you just wait. It requires almost no maintenance. No fertilizing, no pest control, no complicated care. It just grows, and when you harvest it in the late fall, you'll pull up tubers that are bright yellow, orange, pink, or even deep purple. They're stunning. Oca grows best in cool climates with long daylight hours, which means it's perfect for northern gardeners in zones 5 through 9. The plant itself looks a lot like a clover, with shamrock-shaped leaves and a low, bushy growth habit. The tubers form underground as the days get shorter in fall, so you won't see your harvest until late in the season. But when you do, it's worth the wait. Planting Oca is just like planting potatoes. You start with small tubers, plant them about 4 inches deep and 12 inches apart, and let them do their thing. They prefer loose, well-drained soil and full sun, but they're not picky. Once they're established, they're incredibly drought-tolerant. The Incas grew Oca in areas with very little rainfall, and it still produced. The flavor of Oca is what really sets it apart. When you first harvest them, they're quite tart, almost sour. But if you leave them in the sun for a few days, the starches convert to sugars, and the tartness mellows out into a sweet, tangy flavor that's absolutely delicious. You can roast them, boil them, mash them, or even pickle them. They're incredibly versatile. Nutritionally, Oca is a powerhouse. It's high in vitamin C, iron, and potassium. It's also naturally resistant to pests and diseases, which means you're getting clean, organic food without any chemicals or sprays. And here's the best part. Oca stores for months. The Incas would dry them or freeze them for long-term storage, which gave them food security through the harsh Andean winters. But just like Ulluco, Oca was nearly wiped out. The Spanish colonizers dismissed it as peasant food, and for centuries, it was forgotten outside of small farming communities. The 1989 report brought it back into the light, and today, gardeners around the world are rediscovering this incredible crop. If you love potatoes but want something more interesting, more nutritious, and easier to grow, Oca is your answer. Number 6. Mashua, the pest-repelling tuber with a peppery kick. At number 6, we have Mashua, and this one is unlike anything you've ever grown. Mashua is a climbing vine that produces brightly colored tubers underground and edible flowers above ground. The Incas grew it not just for food, but also as a companion plant because it naturally repels pests. Yes, you heard that right. This plant protects your garden while feeding you. Here's what makes Mashua so unique. The tubers have a strong, peppery flavor, almost like a cross between radish and mustard. It's not for everyone, but if you love bold, spicy flavors, you'll absolutely love Mashua. The flowers are also edible and have a milder, slightly sweet taste. You can toss them into salads or use them as a garnish. But the real magic of Mashua is its pest-repelling properties. The plant produces compounds that deter aphids, whiteflies, and even nematodes. The Incas would plant Mashua around their potato fields to protect their main crop from pests. It's a natural, chemical-free pest control system that works. And in your garden, that means less damage, healthier plants, and bigger harvests. Mashua is incredibly easy to grow. It's a vining plant, so it'll climb fences, trellises, or even sprawl along the ground if you let it. It prefers cool weather and grows best in zones 6 through 9. Plant the tubers in spring, about 4 inches deep and 12 inches apart. Give it some support to climb, and it'll take care of the rest. One of the best things about Mashua is that it's nearly indestructible. It tolerates poor soil, drought, frost, and neglect. The Incas grew it at high altitudes where few other crops would survive, and even in tough conditions, it still produces. The tubers form in late fall, just like Oca and Ulluco, and you can harvest them after the first frost. Now let's talk about flavor. Fresh Mashua tubers are quite spicy, too spicy for some people. But here's the trick. After you harvest them, leave them in the sun for a few days or store them in a cool, dark place for a few weeks. The spiciness will mellow out and the flavor becomes much more balanced. You can then boil them, roast them, or even fry them like chips. Mashua was another crop that nearly disappeared. After the Spanish conquest, it was dismissed as too strong-flavored and not worth growing. But traditional farmers in the Andes kept growing it, and thanks to the 1989 report, it's making a comeback. Today, Mashua is being studied for its medicinal properties as well. It's believed to have anti-inflammatory and antimicrobial effects. If you want a crop that's easy to grow, protects your garden, and gives you unique flavors you can't find anywhere else, Mashua is your plant. Number 5. Arracacha, the forgotten root vegetable that tastes like celery meets carrot. Coming in at number 5 is Arracacha, and this is one of the most underrated vegetables in the world. Arracacha is a root vegetable that looks a bit like a cross between a carrot and a parsnip. It has a pale yellow or white flesh, and the flavor is absolutely incredible. A unique blend of celery, carrot, and chestnut. The Incas grew it throughout the highlands, and it was a staple food for thousands of years. Here's what makes Arracacha special. It's one of the most digestible root vegetables you can eat. It's naturally low in fiber, which means it's gentle on the stomach and perfect for people with digestive issues. In fact, in South America, it's often used to make baby food because it's so mild and easy to digest. But don't let that fool you. It's packed with vitamins A and C, calcium, and iron. Arracacha is a bit more challenging to grow than the other crops on this list, but it's still totally doable. It prefers warm, humid climates and grows best in zones 8 through 11. If you're in a cooler climate, you can grow it in a greenhouse or start it indoors and transplant it outside once the weather warms up. The plant takes about 10 to 12 months to mature, which is longer than most vegetables, but the payoff is worth it. When you harvest Arracacha, you'll pull up thick, fleshy roots that can weigh up to a pound or more each. One plant can produce several roots, so you're getting a substantial harvest. Planting Arracacha is a bit different because it's usually grown from offshoots or root divisions rather than seeds. You plant the small offshoot roots about 2 inches deep in rich, well-drained soil. Keep the soil consistently moist but not waterlogged. The plant has beautiful, feathery green foliage above ground, and the roots develop slowly underground. When it comes to cooking, Arracacha is incredibly versatile. You can boil it and mash it like potatoes, roast it, fry it, or even add it to soups and stews. In South America, it's often used to make a thick, creamy soup called locro de Arracacha. The flavor is mild, slightly sweet, and absolutely delicious. But here's the sad part. Arracacha was almost completely forgotten outside of South America. The Spanish colonizers didn't understand it, didn't know how to cook it, and dismissed it as unimportant. For centuries, it was only grown by indigenous farmers in remote mountain valleys. The 1989 report brought it back into the global conversation, and today, seed companies and agricultural researchers are working to make it more widely available. If you're looking for a unique, nutritious, and absolutely delicious root vegetable that almost nobody has heard of, Arracacha is your answer. Barch. Number 4. Tarwi, Andean lupin, the protein powerhouse that fixes your soil. At number 4, we have Tarwi, also known as Andean lupin, and this plant is a nutritional beast. Tarwi is a legume that produces large, colorful beans packed with protein, up to 50% protein by weight. That's more than soybeans, more than chickpeas, and even more than most meats. The Incas used tarwi as a primary protein source, and it sustained entire populations through harsh winters. But here's the part that makes tarwi even more incredible. Like all legumes, it fixes nitrogen in the soil. That means it takes nitrogen from the air and deposits it into the ground, enriching your soil naturally. The Incas knew this, and they used tarwi as a companion crop to improve soil fertility for other plants. It's a food crop and a soil builder in one. Tarwi grows best in cool, high-altitude conditions, but it can be grown in zones 5 through 9 with the right care. It's a tall plant reaching up to 6 feet, with stunning spikes of blue, purple, or white flowers. The beans develop inside pods, just like peas or beans, and they're ready to harvest in late summer or early fall. Planting tarwi is straightforward. Sow the seeds directly into the soil in early spring, about 1 to 2 inches deep and 8 to 12 inches apart. Tarwi prefers well-drained soil and full sun. It's drought-tolerant once established, and it requires very little care. Just plant it, water it occasionally, and let it do its thing. Now here's the catch with Tarwi. The raw beans contain bitter alkaloids that make them inedible. But the Incas developed a simple processing method that removes the bitterness. You soak the beans in water for several days, changing the water daily until the bitterness is gone. After that, you can boil them, roast them, or grind them into flour. Once processed, Tarwi is incredibly nutritious and delicious. The beans have a mild, slightly nutty flavor, and they're incredibly versatile. You can use them in soups, stews, salads, or even as a meat substitute. In South America, Tarwi is often fermented to make a traditional dish called chocho, which is similar to fermented soybeans. Tarwi is also being studied for its health benefits. It's high in protein, fiber, healthy fats, and essential minerals. It's naturally gluten-free, making it perfect for people with celiac disease or gluten intolerance. And because it's a nitrogen-fixing plant, it improves your garden soil while feeding you. But just like the other crops on this list, Tarwi was nearly lost. The Spanish didn't understand how to process it, so they dismissed it as inedible. For centuries, it was only grown by small farming communities in the Andes. The 1989 report brought it back, and today, Tarwi is being hailed as a superfood with the potential to feed millions. If you want a crop that's high in protein, improves your soil, and gives you food security for the long term, Tarwi is your answer. Number 3. Quinoa, the ancient grain. NASA wants to grow in space. At number 3, we have quinoa, and you've probably heard of this one. But here's what you don't know. Quinoa was almost completely wiped out, and it was the 1989 report that saved it. Today, quinoa is a global superfood worth billions of dollars. But just a few decades ago, it was dismissed as peasant food and nearly forgotten. Here's what makes quinoa so special. It's not actually a grain. It's a seed from a plant related to spinach and beets. But it cooks like a grain, and it's incredibly nutritious. Quinoa is a complete protein, meaning it contains all 9 essential amino acids that your body needs. That's rare in the plant world. Most grains and seeds are missing at least one amino acid, but quinoa has them all. On top of that, quinoa is packed with fiber, iron, magnesium, and B vitamins. It's gluten-free, making it perfect for people with gluten intolerance. And it's incredibly versatile. You can use it in salads, soups, porridge, or even bake with it. But here's the part that blows my mind. NASA has been studying quinoa for decades because they want to grow it on long-term space missions. Why? Because it's so nutritious, so easy to grow, and so resilient that it could sustain astronauts on multi-year missions to Mars. If NASA thinks quinoa is that important, you should be growing it in your backyard. Quinoa is surprisingly easy to grow. It's a tall plant, reaching 4 to 6 feet, with beautiful seed heads that come in shades of red, orange, yellow, and white. It grows best in cool climates with low humidity, making it perfect for zones 4 through 8. If you live in a hot, humid area, you can still grow it. Just plant it in early spring or late summer to avoid the peak heat. Planting quinoa is simple. Sow the seeds directly into the soil in early spring, about 1/4 inch deep and 6 to 12 inches apart. Quinoa prefers well-drained soil and full sun. It's drought-tolerant once established, and it requires very little care. In fact, quinoa is one of the most low-maintenance crops you can grow. The seeds are ready to harvest in about 90 to 120 days, depending on the variety. You'll know they're ready when the leaves start to drop off and the seed heads dry out. Simply cut the seed heads, let them dry completely, and then thresh them to remove the seeds. One small patch of quinoa can produce pounds and pounds of seeds. Before you cook quinoa, you need to rinse it thoroughly to remove the natural coating called saponin, which tastes bitter. But once rinsed, quinoa is delicious. It has a mild, slightly nutty flavor that works in both savory and sweet dishes. Here's the sad part. After the Spanish conquest, quinoa was banned in some areas because it was associated with indigenous religious practices. For centuries, it was only grown by small Andean communities. The 1989 report changed everything. It highlighted quinoa as a crop with enormous potential, and within a few decades, it exploded onto the global market. Today, quinoa is one of the most popular health foods in the world. But it almost didn't survive, and that's why this report was so important. It saved quinoa from extinction and brought it to millions of people worldwide. Number 2. Potatoes, the crop that fed empires and changed history. At number 2, we have potatoes. And yes, you've heard of this one. But here's what most people don't realize. The potatoes we eat today are only a tiny fraction of the potato varieties that existed in the Incan Empire. The Incas cultivated over 4,000 different varieties of potatoes, each one adapted to specific climates, altitudes, and growing conditions. Today, most of the world eats only a handful of varieties. Thousands of ancient potato varieties were lost. Here's what makes the Incan potatoes so special. They were bred for resilience, nutrition, and flavor. Some varieties could survive freezing temperatures. Others could grow in rocky, nutrient-poor soil. Some were naturally resistant to pests and diseases. The Incas spent centuries perfecting these varieties, and they created a food system that fed millions of people in one of the harshest environments on Earth. But after the Spanish conquest, most of these varieties were abandoned. European colonizers took a few potato varieties back to Europe, and those became the basis for the potatoes we eat today. But the incredible diversity of the Incan potato was forgotten. The 1989 report brought attention to these lost potato varieties, and today, seed banks and agricultural organizations are working to preserve and distribute them. Varieties like Papa Amarilla, yellow potato, Papa Morada, purple potato, and Chuño, Wadish freeze-dried potato, are being rediscovered and shared with gardeners around the world. Growing heritage potatoes is just like growing regular potatoes. You plant seed potatoes in early spring, about 4 inches deep and 12 inches apart. They need full sun, well-drained soil, and consistent moisture. But unlike commercial potatoes, heritage varieties often have more flavor, more nutrition, and better disease resistance. If you want to grow real Incan potatoes, look for seed companies that specialize in heritage and heirloom varieties. You'll find potatoes in every color imaginable: white, yellow, red, purple, and even blue. Some taste nutty, some taste buttery, some taste almost sweet. The diversity is incredible. Potatoes were the crop that fed the Incan Empire, and they later changed the course of European history. They're one of the most important crops ever domesticated, and we almost lost the original varieties forever. Number 1. Kiwicha, amaranth. The grain that survives drought, frost, and time. And finally, at number 1, we have Kiwicha, also known as amaranth, and this is the ultimate survival crop. Kiwicha is a pseudo-grain that produces tiny, protein-rich seeds that can sustain you through almost anything. The Incas called it the golden grain of the gods, and it was a sacred food used in religious ceremonies and daily meals. Here's what makes Kiwicha the number 1 lost crop. It's nearly indestructible. It survives drought, frost, poor soil, pests, and neglect. It grows fast, produces heavily, and requires almost no care. And nutritionally, it's a powerhouse. High in protein, fiber, calcium, iron, and magnesium. It's a complete protein, just like quinoa, which means it contains all 9 essential amino acids. Kiwicha was banned by the Spanish colonizers because it was used in indigenous religious rituals. Growing it was punishable by death. For centuries, it was nearly extinct, but small communities in the Andes kept growing it in secret, and thanks to the 1989 report, it's making a comeback. Today, amaranth is being hailed as a superfood and a climate-resilient crop that could feed the world as temperatures rise and water becomes scarce. NASA is even studying it for space missions, just like quinoa. Growing kiwicha is incredibly easy. Plant the seeds in spring, about 1/4 inch deep and 12 inches apart. It grows fast, reaching 4 to 6 feet tall, with stunning red, orange, or gold seed heads. Harvest the seeds in late summer, thresh them, and store them. One plant can produce thousands of seeds. You can cook amaranth like rice, pop it like popcorn, or grind it into flour. It's delicious, nutritious, and versatile. Kiwicha almost disappeared from history, but it survived. And now, it's here to save us. The friends, bonus tip, how to get these seeds and start growing today. Here's the bonus tip I promised. Most of these lost Incan crops aren't available at your local garden center, but you can find them through specialty seed companies, online gardening communities, and seed exchanges. Look for companies that specialize in heirloom, heritage, and rare seeds. Join online forums and Facebook groups dedicated to rare crops. And most importantly, save your seeds. Once you grow these crops, save the seeds and replant them. Share them with friends. Spread the knowledge. These crops almost died. Don't let them disappear again. If this video inspired you, hit that subscribe button, drop a comment, and share this with someone who needs to know. Let's bring these lost crops back, together. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Now go grow something incredible.